Welcome to an episode of Seasons of Life, the podcast. If this is your first time here, hey there and welcome. I am your host, Margot Blair, and I always get really excited when I have the chance to meet new people for a few specific reasons. The sole purpose of Seasons of Life, the podcast, is to have real, raw, and practical conversations that help women like you, like me, navigate effectively through seasons of our lives. And today is another day where we get to have a really powerful conversation with a new friend of mine. And I'm just excited for us to connect. We're going to talk about growth. I know you always have the growth conversations, but this one I think is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to be a timely word for you. So sit back, relax, but make sure you have your notepad and pen at the ready. I'm so excited to introduce to you our guest for today. Her name is Chelsea Christensen. Hey, Chelsea, how are you?
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And like you said, we're new friends, but I'm also like, wait, have we always been friends? One of those situations. So I'm just really excited to have this conversation with you and be here today.
Amen. Again, I'm just really excited for today's conversation, right? We connected over on social media. If you see somebody on social media, ladies, and you want to be their friend, just shoot the DM, just shoot your shot and just share your heart, because that's what we did. And we connected and it was instant. And it just a few short months later, here we are having this conversation, right? Because for us, we were able to just establish some common ground from the beginning. Two kingdom women, two kingdom mamas, two kingdom wives. We know we're on fire for the Lord, and God is using us to make transformative impacts in the lives of others. And so why not come together and have a conversation about our experiences and pour into the women that we're called to lead and serve? So that's what we did.
Yep. And you want to know what? It was interesting because you started following me, and we usually get a few people kind of following each day, and sometimes I'll be like, oh, who is that? And sometimes I won't, like, just it doesn't not like anything personal or whatever, but sometimes people will come and you'll see, and something inside of you will say, like, go see who this person is. And so I try to just not ask any questions and just like say, okay, sure, I hear you, I'm going over there. And I go over and I like my initial response, and very, very, very rarely do I ever respond to someone who's maybe like followed and say like, hey, thanks for being here. And I would love to get to know you. And I love what you're doing. Like that just, when you're busy and there's a lot going on, like that doesn't really happen a lot. But it was exactly like that for me. As soon as I went over to your page, I was just like, I believe that light sees light, it recognizes light. And it was very obvious for me when you like started following that there was light there and I was drawn to it. And so thank you for being you.
Absolutely. And it's mutual. Again, one of the things that stood out is I was like, okay, she's a business coach, but she also has a teacher company and it's connected, but it's not the same. I said, this is what I keep seeing in this season, where there are multi-passionate women who we are not allowing ourselves to be put in a box. We are using what God has given us and we're making an impact, right? For some of it, let's be transparent. We're entrepreneurs. So yes, we make money to run our businesses. But for us, I think it's a little bit different. So sis, can we talk a little bit about that for the other multi-passionate women, whether it's entrepreneur, whether it's corporate and how homemaking, whatever it is. How did you make that decision that you are going to show up as your full self, using everything that God placed in your hand, rather than bearing your talents, like we see in the Bible?
Yeah. So I have a screen printing company, and that's kind of like my main original business that I've had for like 17 years. And I found myself in a place where I've always kind of thought if you just put your head down, work really hard, and you make a lot of money, then you're going to be successful and it's going to feel good. And I found myself in a place where I had my head down and I was doing a phenomenal job, like at my work, and the business was growing and it was successful and all of these things. And I was like, wait, this is success. like there's money in the bank. People love the work that I do, and I'm working really, really hard. And this is success. Like I'm like, I don't think this is what I want, and I was really struggling, and I was overwhelmed, and I was working way too much. And I had lost the connections that were super, not lost, but I could tell that there was some like wedge between the people in my life that I truly wanted to be connected with, or even just connection with myself. And so I found myself asking, like, what else, what else, how can I do this? And so from there, I did a lot of like inner work of where am I, who am I, what is important to me, what matters to me. And also, like, I know, because so for like 10 years, I had my print shop, and I outsourced the printing, and I did all the design, the ordering, everything. And I got to a place where it really needed to be all in-house. And so I was so prayerful. It was like, once my kids had all kind of gone to school, and I was just like, please let me know if this is the right answer. And it was like a clear, like, yes, this is the answer. So then a couple of years into it, I was like, hold on, like, this is the path you led me on. But like, I thought that was going to make things easier. I thought it was going to make them feel better. I thought when you said this is the way, that meant like it was going to be clear, and it was going to be, joyful, and it was going to feel good. And I'm like, but here's the thing, is like,
not happening the way I thought it would.
No. And I'm in that moment. And there was like there's two parts to it, because number one, I was still in question, like, how is this the way? But I like knew 100% that God had said, yes, this is the way. So then I found myself not being able to like waver from that. And so then I kind of like got to the point where I sat there, and I was like, okay, this is me sitting here, and I said yes, and here I am. And so this feels bad. Now, can you show me anything else? Like, is there anything else you can show me here? Because this is really hard, and this is really overwhelming, and this feels bad, and it was like kind of in those moments of like brokenness where I listened, I asked, I listened, I followed, and then I was like completely broken, that I was out of desperation. I kind of like hired my first business coach. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I didn't even know that there was someone who had gone before you that could kind of help you learn and whatever. And so I hired my first business coach. And the funny thing that happened is, while he was coaching me, I was mostly watching and saying, like, okay, there's something here. This is something for you. This is actually not really about your business, but this is something for you. Like, look, did you even know there's a business coach? Like, did you even know that you could? And I always wanted to be a teacher my whole life. So I taught dance for a long time. And then I thought you could be a dance teacher or a school teacher. I didn't even know that I could teach people like how to navigate through life and business and motherhood and all of those things. And so I found myself like learning from him, but being like, wait, did I need to go to the breaking point where I felt like I needed help to get to the place where I was like, oh, you can help me? Then I'm like, wait, I can help other people, So that's what kind of like led me to the next stage of my business of like, I just want to help other women. I want to help other moms. I want to help, people see the way that they can live with harmony in their business and their lives. I want to show them that they can, be an example to their children of things that matter to them and that they're passionate for. And then from there, I got to the point where I was like, okay, so I had like a website called Best Day Everything for a while, because I was like needing to spread a message of like, you know what, every day is not the best day, but there is a best in every day. So for a long time I had, not for a long time, but for a while I had that. And then I got to the place where I was like, I want to teach a message. Like people don't really want to be taught a lot. If you've ever noticed, right? Yeah. It's like the key to being an amazing teacher is when people are learning and they have no idea they're learning. And so I've kind of been like, okay, how can I get messages across? I still show up speaking and teaching and all of those things, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I could put all of these messages on a shirt and create this brand that is all about the relationship that you have with yourself. Because here's the other truth that I believe is that the reason why the relationship that you have with yourself is so important is because I believe that God is on the inside. And so I'm like, I don't even have to say like, go to God. I don't even have to say, because there's a lot of people that might be resistant to that. But if I know that God is inside, if I can get people to stop and to listen and to go inside for more self-love, patience, understanding, grace, encouragement, all those things, if I can get people, because people will do that, right? And so all the messaging now for my shirt subscription is that it's the relationship that you have with you and you. And some people might think like, but what about God? Like the most relationship. But I'm like, I actually know that God is inside of every single person. And so I think that's my way of like, I don't know. So it's kind of been like progress and just taking those next steps and trusting the answer, even if it doesn't feel like sunshine and rainbows sometimes, you know?
And it's big that you said that. I completely understand what you're sharing about just the journey, right? And it's always a journey. That's what this experience is about, is understanding that, you know, people can have goals and aspirations, but when we are hyper focused on the end game, we're missing what's happening in between, right?
Did you read my post today on Instagram?
No, I didn't see it. Did you say almost exactly that?
Okay, so I said, just because it's not your end game doesn't mean that you shouldn't progress, because progress is progress. But then at the end of the post, I said, and the truth of the matter is that end game is actually maybe doesn't even exist, because when we're focused on the end game, we miss the entire experience. Like literally word for word what you just said.
Yes. And I completely agree with this, right? So one of the things that I knew we had to talk about was the superwoman syndrome. And I'll kick off this conversation because we can go so deep here. But one of the things I struggled with that for so many years. And before I became a wife and a mom, I had already been an entrepreneur for about 7-8 years. And for me, I was like, I got to do this. I got to hustle. I got to move. And I was also looking out for other people. And so I just kept loading on and loading on and loading on and loading on. And one of the things that I realized is, one, I could not do that anymore. Two, it 100% was not healthy. How am I, a personal development consultant, coach, trainer, teacher, yet the one component that I'm telling y'all to practice is rest, and I don't do it, right? So again, I really had to take a hard look and do some introspective work. And I realized, I said, Lord, I cannot keep doing this. I really want to honor you. I'm teaching some great things. They're applying it. They're seeing the outcome, but I need the help to apply these same lessons in my life. Remove from me anything that is interfering with me honoring you in my rest.
You know, actually, I have a big sign that it's the Mother Teresa that says, if you want to bring true happiness to the world, go home and love your family. And I know it's a quote that is, you know, used a lot, and it means probably a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But actually, that's like an anchor to me, because I can be so involved and so wrapped up in so many good things that I can be removed from the most important things. And that is this home, this family, this development of my children. You know, it's like I could go out and try to save all the people in the world and give them all the help and the tools that they need. But if I'm not doing that in my own home or with my own self, then it's like, what's it even worth?
You're missing something. And that was part of that big shift for me, because again, this was a question that I had asked a while ago. And I realized that the answer was unfolding over time, but it wasn't until I became married and I became a bonus mom and then birthed our youngest, where I was like, so I totally thought I was going to have this whole big old launch the week I had my child. Who did I think I was? Just crazy, right? And again, not having the experience, I've handled it. I can do this. Every technological issue you can think of went down on this supposed to be live video training. It was horrible. But why am I even sharing this when it comes to the Superwoman syndrome, when it comes to growth? I think the biggest lesson for me at that season was understanding this word I believe I received from the Holy Spirit. And it was, I'm taking you on a route that's unfamiliar to you so that I can get you to the destination I've predestined for you.
That's beautiful.
And I still get chills thinking about that word. I was on my way to my doctoral residency and it hit me like a Mack truck. And I'm like, Lord, this couldn't have been anybody but you, but let's break this down. And I really started praying over and seeing, okay, what does this look like in my life? Like, I know what do I do with this word now that I received it? Because it was so powerful for me, right? And part of the thing, as I started peeling back the layers, what I started realizing was there were areas of my life, and you said this is why I'm actually re-emphasizing this. It was a good thing, but was it a God thing? Right? I realized that I was no longer battling with right versus wrong. I was battling with right versus God's will.
That's good.
And that revelation shifted everything for me, where I was like, okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm going to walk away from these multi-5-figure, 6-figure contracts for this business development. And I'm going to go all in leading or teaching the gospel.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How did you distinguish between the two?
The main thing was I was really, really good at what I was doing with the business consulting. I was great at teaching how to lay a solid business foundation for entrepreneurs. I was great at teaching how to leverage strategic partnerships. I was doing that in myself, and I was able to teach other people. But what I realized, not just for me, here's the kicker, that this is really what distinguished it for me. It wasn't just me, it was the clients that I was serving. I was like, there's something else that God has placed on your heart that you want to do. Because I know it's true for me. I don't want to project onto you, but let me just see. And they said, yes, but I have to pay the bills. All said the same thing. I'm doing this to pay the bills, but my passion is what I heard God tell me is. And I'm like,
yeah, you're like this is we're like in this rat race all together. And you being in there with them was like helping to support them in doing just the cycle of like, I need to make money. I need to make money. I need to make money.
And that's for many people, many even of the women that are tuning in now. That's what it is. Like, I'm doing this. I'm working this job. I'm doing X because I have to, not because I want to. And not because God told me to. And so that kind of just had me think, I'm like, we definitely have to talk about this, right? What was your most memorable encounter with God?
I can think of a few, but I actually think maybe the one that stands out to me the most was I was at a retreat coaching women. And this wasn't like a religious retreat, but I think something that's really important is to ask the question too, whatever work that you're doing is like, how can I include you in this work? And how can you show up through me in this work that I'm doing? Because it is true that some people like have to have a job to put food on their table. Right. And so in that moment is how can I bring you into the work that I'm doing? Even if you're a cashier at Walmart, like, God, how can people see you through the work that I do? Maybe you are the most kind and patient, like, checker that there ever was. And so if that is you and you're listening and you're like, I have a vision for this bigger thing. And right now you're like, it's not possible for you. The way we learn how to hear God and to use him and to follow him is by literally just bringing him into anywhere that we go. So I think that's one thing that I just wanted to mention. But I remember at this retreat I'm coaching and I go down this hallway to go to the bathroom. And it felt a little frantic. Like, the women felt frantic. There was like this urgency of like, I'm just like I'm trying to do all these things. And I really want to do this thing, but I'm burnt out and I'm tired and blah, blah, blah. So I literally prayed and I was like, what do these women actually need? What do they need? Right. So I'm in this dark hallway and it was like one of the only times that I feel like I heard a voice. Like, it's like you hear the statement and you're like, whoa. And the answer that I received that day was fire in her heart, peace in her soul. Fire in her heart, peace in her soul. And all of a sudden I was like, I could see how that's what I was trying to achieve. I could see that like God wanted me to have this fire in me that made me feel alive, that was like motivating, that it was light, that people could see, it would draw people in. But also I had noticed there was times when the fire turned more like into a wildfire and burned down my entire city because I didn't realize that it was like on fire, but I was in charge of like tending the fire and keeping it, you know.
Man. Yeah.
Right. And that was where I lost the peace. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like how can I like focus on this fire that lights me up and also protect this peace of our soul, which no success is worth the peace of our soul, right? We know that. We've experienced that. This, when all of a sudden there's no peace, it's like, oh, is my fire out of control or is my fire gone? And it could be either.
And again, that is so rich. One of the things that we talked about just in the very beginning was the way I was boldly talking about faith, right? But what you were sharing with me was that is your foundation. So even though it's not in the forefront on social posts or your business, you're still praying for the people you serve. You're still bold in your faith, even if that's not the forefront of your message. I wanted to bring that up, just kind of even coinciding with what you're sharing, because the one thing that we never want to do, I've heard it before, is if God, just go, just jump and do X, Y, Z. You still have to consult with the one who gave you your vision in the first place. There's a reason you are where I believe God placed you. You were saying it, Chelsea. You were talking about right where God has you, at your place of work, in your family. If this is a season where you want to be building your business, but God has you as a professional homemaker, i.e. a stay-at-home mom, thrive in that. What does it look like for you to be the best professional home? I'm talking about those cutting up the little cute cubes for your kids putting on the plate and make whatever it is, doing some new recipes. Or if God has you in a season where you were trying out to become an entrepreneur and he's like, I need you back in corporate. I need you here. Rather than stomping or dragging your feet, not applying or not showing up for interviews or showing up the way you know you should, that may be where you are supposed to be in this season to serve the people that God has assigned to you. And I really want us to understand this perspective, right? In this world of online education and entrepreneurship, it is not for the faint of heart. If I could, I would totally love to work a 9-to-5. I would totally love to do it.
That sounds like my worst nightmare.
But that is not the way anything in my life is set up. Nothing at all. Yeah. And so for me, this is a realization that I had to have. I was a horrible employee. And so let me not waste your time. Let me not take your resources investing into me because there's a way I know how to do it faster. Let me do it faster, but it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I realized that if I was a horrible employee at somebody else's job, what was I taking into my business? And that is really where I started to thrive or grow when it came to not even just working with women at the intersection of faith and business, but also how I showed up to serve. Because I realized the things that I was challenged with in a corporate job, they weren't necessarily the same things that I had to do in my business, but also I got to choose how I wanted to run the business, work the business, wanted to work. And so why am I even sharing all of this? I think the important piece for us to know is whatever season that we're in, we shouldn't be looking to our left, our right. We shouldn't be looking at what other people are doing because that's not what we have been given. We have to be good stewards over, again, the hands that we're dealt so that we can really serve in the capacity that God has called us to. Again, whether that's our faith through our work or our faith in us while we're working.
And I think if you do find yourself looking to the right or the left, there can be something beautiful that I call proof of possibility that can happen for you. It's like when I hired that business coach, instead of being like, oh, he has a great life, he gets to do this, I was like, oh, this is God showing me proof of possibility. And in a way, it was looking around, but I wasn't comparing myself to him. I was
That's the
saying,
difference.
right. And I
That's the
think that's
difference.
the danger zone, is when we're like, why didn't you give me this? Why don't I have this? It's like, what do you want me to see? Like, I'm looking, and I'm not going to stay here looking, but like, is there something for me to see here in this moment? Is there a proof of possibility for me? Because, sometimes we have to borrow courage or borrow knowledge from other people, like, oh, actually, this just sparked something in me. Thank you for the proof of possibility. And now, God, how can we work through this together?
I think that's really big. Again, where women are at this place where I believe, and I don't think this is new, right? We think sometimes we should be further than we are.
Mm.
And having that,
But that just tells us that there's more, and that's okay, right?
yes,
Like, we can look at, like, I wish I was further along. Congratulations. Now there's more for you. It doesn't
yes,
have to feel like this suffocating, like, breakdown, because if you don't believe that there's further down the road for you, like, maybe that's when you've lost the fire. Maybe that's when you're not asking the question, instead of letting it feel like this heavy weight, look for it like, okay, I'm so happy to know that there's more for me.
right. And understanding, right? We don't have to rush the process, just
Mhm.
growing. What I
Mhm.
like to say is growing at the pace of grace,
Mm.
understanding that, like, what does it look like to surrender? What does
Mhm.
it look like to really continue to just be better than you were before?
Yeah.
Right. And we're talking about mindset, we're talking about beliefs, we're talking about habits, the decisions that we're making so that we can really begin to show up as the women that we're predestined to be.
I love
What would
that.
you say, Chelsea? What would you say is a myth that women are currently facing right now when it comes to breaking free from strongholds so that they can become the women that they've been designed to be?
Something that I'm seeing a lot of is like that it's like people are wanting to push in a way that doesn't necessarily feel good to them or feel right to them. They're trying to grab the attention in current trends. It's like, I can only have success if I'm acting in this way, or if I'm showing up in this certain thing, or I'm sharing these certain things, or in this way. It's like, I feel like there's this pull for like more reaction, more, does that make sense? It's like it's hard to put into words, but I've experienced it in some ways. Like, I look at my, social media presence or my business, and there are some things that I could absolutely do that would maybe move my business faster, but it's out of integrity with myself. And so I think that's the thing, is like hoping that people are willing to stay in integrity with themselves in order to grow, in order to find success that they really want, in order to have the results. Is like, is this actually who I am? And is this in alignment with me and God? Or do I see this opportunity that is actually going to suck the life out of me, that is going to not bring me the fulfillment that I want? You might get money, you might get clients, you might get success, but I absolutely believe that when we function from a place that is out of integrity with ourselves and with God, that we will get to the place where we're like, this is success, you know?
And I love that. I know that many of the women who are hearing what we're sharing today about, breaking away from that superwoman syndrome, really allowing ourselves to grow at a pace that is not comparing ourselves to what other people are doing, right? It's not this standard that's unrealistic for where we are, the responsibilities and the priorities that we have to maintain. I think the one thing that I'm really believing for women, just Christian women who
Mm-hmm.
are looking to dive deeper in their faith, but also step out in what God is calling them to do. My prayer is that they are bold and relentless in their pursuit, that nothing can derail them. If there's not somebody in their corner cheering them on, that they're still going to go forward. That if they aren't seeing the results or seeing God move as quickly as they want them to move, that they're still going to trust God along the way. I want to ask you, Chelsea, as we come to a close in this episode, what is one final message that you'd like our audience to kind of keep in their back pocket?
Well, as you were speaking about pace, I just was reminded of this idea that so many times we just want to grow up. Like we just want to grow up as, this is success straight up. But what we don't understand is how big the foundation needs to be in order to support what it is that we are building. And I believe that God knows what the foundation needs to look like. And so when we listen and trust, we are actually building the foundation for the greatness and the big and the success that he has waiting for us. But we're just like, okay, that looks good. Yeah. We got a 4x4. Yeah, that sounds great. Let's go up. And it's like, no, you need like a 400 by 400 foundation in order to sustain. And something that I want to also just encourage you is that there is so much power in just saying yes to God. So many times I've asked and I've had this question, and then the answer was like, yes, this. So I was like, okay, I hear you, I'm doing this. And then I hear you, I'm doing this. And I expected that it was going to come with this result that I saw. So I wasn't necessarily listening to the result, it wasn't clear to me, but I had this expectation. And so the most important thing is that we practice saying yes to God, because the more that we listen and say yes, the more we build that trust, that connection with him, so that as that foundation is growing and strengthening, that as those yeses it's easier to hear him and to know that we can say yes, and that regardless of what the outcome looks like, it is furthering his work. It is furthering our connection, our relationship with him. And we're building something so beautiful, so meaningful, and honestly, everlasting.
Again, this conversation has been so rich, so timely. The one thing that I just keep hearing over and over through our conversation was something that you said, Chelsea, and you said, fire in my heart, peace in my soul. And that is my prayer for every woman who is listening to this episode, watching the replay, that as you continue along your journey, pray that prayer over yourself, declare this over yourself, that as you are walking boldly, standing firm in your faith, whether it's publicly or whether it's here, and that is part of your foundation, fire in your heart and peace in your soul. The sole purpose of these conversations here in the Seasons of Life podcast is that we're teaching and equipping you to navigate more effectively through seasons of your life using biblical principles as well as practical personal development strategies. We don't want to just share the successes and the breakthroughs that we've had. We also want to make sure that we're continuing to share with you the lessons that have taught us how to really be bold ambassadors for the kingdom of God in season and out of season. Sometimes it's being steadfast in our faith when the challenges arise. So our goal that we believe that we achieved is that we are pointing you back to the presence and redemptive work of God as he is moving in and through your life. We pray that this message blesses you and that you tune in for the next episode. Until then, God bless. Keep making a transformative impact.